As part of my submission for the Worship Leaders course, I'm thinking about how God appears to us in everyday life. And I was brought back to a time when we were walking around here. I'm currently at Fairhaven Lake, which is a really lovely place to have a walk around. Not a long walk, but a pleasant walk, particularly on a day like today when it's sunny, just a light breeze, and you can see the estuary. And Dave and I quite often come down here when we've got something to talk about or when we need to get out of the house. Obviously during the pandemic it was a really key resource when we were allowed to go a mile or two away from home for an hour. So it was a really valuable resource to us. And I'm brought back to a time probably about 3 years ago, about September 21, when we'd had a bit of a tension in our lives really. My brother and sister-in-law had a lot of problems over on the Isle of Man. It had completely locked down during the pandemic, and they were looking for a house in the St Anne's area so that they could come and be nearer us and get the support of family that they needed at that time. And I'd been so worried about my brother and sister-in-law, and it was very frustrating because when they were on the island there was nothing we could do, and they limited help over the phone. So they'd come over for about 3 or 4 weeks initially to stay with us so that they could look for a house in the area. Dave and I are both private people really, and we like our own privacy, so no matter how much you love someone, it's really hard having people in the house 24 hours a day for a month or so. And so which we'd managed quite well. We'd had quite a nice time with them, and they'd gone back to the islands to regroup and think about the options. And then a few weeks later they asked if they could come back again because they wanted to have a second look at some of the houses. And it was really hard because we'd just got used to having our privacy back and our own separate lives back, being such kind of insular people really ourselves. And so it caused a few tensions between Dave and I. And we'd come over here to have a walk around and just to get out of the house and to think about things a bit more clearly, which we sometimes do. And thinking back to this particular day, it was similar weather to how it is today actually, with really nice and warm, almost like a summer day, even though we're well into September now. And just as we were walking past, just about this part, just about halfway round, and a sudden mist came in off the estuary. A really light mist, but definitely a mist. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face kind of mist. So it was very real and very much there. And walking along, I suddenly had a feeling that everything was going to be okay. I felt a sense of calm, and that God was with us, and that everything was going to be all right in the end. Dave said he had a similar experience. He obviously noticed the mist that had come in. You couldn't really not miss it. He didn't experience it in quite the same way as I did, but I very much had a feeling that God was here with us in spirit, in the mist that had come over, and I felt very much that it was a signal that everything was going to be okay, to not to worry and to find peace in that moment. And it struck me that this is quite a good example of where you find God. If you're listening and if you're quiet and if you're receptive, you can find God in everyday life. And it was very, very helpful to me. As I say, it was nearly 3 years ago now, but I still remember it very clearly, and Fairhaven Lake's always been a place of peace. So I'm very grateful that we've had that experience.